Okay, so we'll go ahead with DevOps life cycle, and we'll go ahead with DevOps tool, and then end up with the DevOps and the cloud, how DevOps and the cloud are interrelated. So today's session would be bit of like, apart from Unix and Linux, bit of theoretical. So the sessions will go like this, that are probably first two sessions would be a bit of theoretical and all, because you have to, where you will get the in-depth knowledge of the things and the tools and the terminologies, for what purpose we are using those tools and what are the roles of these tools. Once we are good with that, then we'll go ahead with the, like, we'll take the pace and we'll go ahead with the development and all those things in parallel together. Okay, now so to start with introduction to Unix and Linux, the reason we have put this Unix and Linux here, because every one of you have experience on Windows OS, because whoever takes the operating system or whoever takes the laptop, they go ahead with the Windows OS. However, we there are like a lot of people who are not much familiar with Unix Linux concepts, or they are not more familiar with the command line tools, that how you work with the command line and all those. Whereas for DevOps, this is one of the important thing. Like, at least it's not that okay, you can't do the things with UI, you can do the things with UI, but as a DevOps engineer, you should know that how you can work with Unix and Linux softwares as well, Unix and Linux operating systems as well. So we know that operating system is something which basically manages each and every task, whether it's related to hardware, whether it's related to software, or anything like task scheduling, your task processing, the multi-threading, and all those things are being taken care by operating system as well. We have different types of operating systems, like we have Windows, Unix, Linux, Red Hat, iOS, etc. For Unix and Linux, we have uh, the variant as the Sun OS, as the Solaris, CentOS, Red Hat, and different versions we are using. So for today's one, we will be we'll be talking about few of the commands, that how does this work looks like, and yeah. So Linux was developed by Linus Torvald. Linus Torvald was one of the person who has developed a Linux operating system along with his team, and Unix was developed in the AT&T labs. So Unix was developed in the AT&T labs, where it was like uh, it was developed in 1969 year. And these all Unix, Linux also, they perform the same kind of functionality which your Windows operating system perform. Just the difference is that in Unix you have the complete black screen, which you will see, where you will be working on the servers and these things, and you will be doing all the operations via the command line. For Linux, for Ubuntu, for CentOS, we have the UI as well. It's not that for Linux we don't have, but there are some for which we have the UIs and those things. So for Linux, if you have Linux, so you can go ahead with Ubuntu system and you can use the UI as well for that. But I would be going through few of the basic commands with you guys. And for that, like today, I'm not using putty, but I would be like, I have a git bash which also accepts or takes the command as the Linux Unix command. So I would be going ahead with that. So the first important command is pwd, which stands for present working directory. Okay, pwd, and it stands for present working directory, which basically tells you that in which directory you are currently. Okay, so currently I am in this directory, so it will tell that okay, I am in this directory. Now if you have to go to any other directory, or if you have to list out the list out the files which are present under this directory. So if you have to present, or if you have to list out the files which are present under this directory, so what I'll do, I'll be using ls minus lrt. Okay, so guys, don't just get confused or think that before starting with DevOps also why I've started with this at the first day and like the first hour itself. The reason, because like this is the important thing. So like I want to you guys to be familiar with this, with and so that after that we can start with the DevOps and these stuffs. Okay. Now, if I go ahead with ls minus lrt, so basically, if you talk about only ls is what it basically lists out all the files and directories which are present under this folder. Okay, you can take it as a folder. See you this Sachin Agarwal. This is the folder under which whatever files will be there, you will get it like this, that these are the folders which I have here. But if I do ls minus lrt, okay, so minus lrt means that we are putting up some options there so that it should be it should display the output in a structured way. And when I do this, you see the output has been changed. When I put ls, it listed out only the files. But when I did this, what happens is it listed out at what kind of file it is. It first column basically tells you that what kind of file it is, whether it's a directory or whether it's a file. If D is appended, it means it is a directory or a folder. If D is not there, that means that it is a file and these things. This L is nothing, is basically tell that there is some symbolic link or kind of a shortcuts are there which are created. So if like I have like some shortcuts and these things which are created here, or the symbolic links which refer to other locations. So L means symbolic links. Okay. Now second column is nothing. It will tell you the basically like the sorry, not second. In this column, RWXR means read, write, and append these permissions. And so these permissions will tell you nothing. It will like be tell that for the user, for the group, and for the role, what are the permissions associated to them. So like for this, for it works with the, so it works in this particular fashion, like RWX, it says that 4, 2, and 1. So here like one is for the users and one is for the groups. So if you have to give the permission to all of them, like to the users, to the groups, and to the roles, in that case you will give 7, like for any particular file. So what you do, you basically add up everything and you give it to 7. But if I want to give the permission, read permission only to read and write permission only to users, so I'll just like I'll sum up like here it has a 6 and I'll write that. However, what happens that if you write 444, then everyone will have only the read permissions. Okay, everyone will have only the read permissions. If you write 641, then users will have the permission as read, and for the groups which are like assigned differently, it will be having read, and for the other roles and things, it will have the this, it will have normal, like it will not have any permissions to access. Sorry, I have to put 0 here. It will have no permissions. So this is something related to like very deep concept of Unix and those things. We really don't have to like we are not going to configure and do these type of things. This is something with respect to administration part, but just for understanding, I'm like telling you that how does this RWX works. Then we have the size of the file, and here it is the size of a file. These are some of the numbers. I'm forgetting about these options, but this is the username. Then here we have a date timestamp, that whatever the date and time when the file was created, and there is your file name. But if I want to put hidden file also, so I will append A. If I want to list out the hidden files also, so I will append A. And if any file which has the dot appended in front of it, okay, dot appended in front of it, that is my hidden file. Okay, that is my hidden file. So if you want to list out any hidden files, it will be A. Now I am into C users this directory. If I want to change the directory and move to any other directory, so I will use command as cd, which stands for change directory, and I will give the name to which I have to move. So let's say I move to cd downloads, and now I can move to this directory to download. So now you see that my directory has been changed. Now here, like if I list out, I have a lot of files and all. So if I want to remove any file, so let's say if I want to remove this particular file, okay, so I'll use a command name as rm, and I'll paste this file name, and this file has been removed. Now if I search for this, so if you want to list a particular file, you can list by giving the name of the file. So you say that cannot access because no such file or directory, as I have removed it. Okay, similarly, if you want to basically if you want to remove the directory, so you will use rmdir. Okay, rmdir. And if you want to remove the directory and the contents also inside it, then you will use the option as r minus r, which means that it will go deleted recursively. Recursively means that first it will delete the contents which are inside that folder, and then this folder, and then the folder. Okay, rm minus rf means that something, there are some items which are not like deleted or things, so it will forcefully delete them. So that's not an issue. You can use dir minus rf to delete the things. These are the three commands: cd, ls or ls minus lrt, or rm, rmdir. These are the commands which basically like helps you to perform the basic operations. Okay, very basic operations. Now, apart from that, clear command is there to clear the screen. Okay, then we talk about uname minus a. So uname minus a basically tells the username. Okay, like here, let's say my username is this, so it will tell you what particular the name is there of this system. If I want to check the uptime of the system, like since when the system is up, okay, so this is not working here. But if I want to check the uptime, so because it's not a like a fully Linux utility with the get bash, but with the uptime, what you can do, you can check the command. It will basically tell you from when the system is up. Okay, until when, like 3 hours, 4 hours, 2 days, 3 days, since when it is up, it will tell you that. Let's see few more commands here. If you want to create any directory, okay, or if you want to create any directory, what you will do, you will write mkdir, that is make directory, and the name of the directory. It will create the directory for you. Okay. If you want to create any file, so if you want to create any file, you can write touch test today, and you see it has created this file. So the touch command will do what? Touch command will basically just create your file. But if you want to write the contents to this file, so you can use the vi editor. Okay, there is a vi editor, and if you click this, it will take you to the inside the file, and now you can write anything. So to write inside this, there are like the things, because you have to work with the insert mode and these things, through which you can write into the file. Okay, Sanmukha, if you have an audio problem, so like it's probably from your end, because I believe everyone else can able to listen me. So like you might have to check your internet connectivity and system. Okay, so if I do escape I, so you see here, it changes to insert mode. And now I can type anything. Okay, now I can type anything here. Okay. Yes, Sanmukha, tell me. Okay, so here it will be hello from Bing Data, and it is written. But if I want to save again, I will put escape, and I will write colon WQ. Okay, and this file has been saved. Now if I want to view the contents of this file, I can do cat, and it will display all the contents of this file. Okay, more command also works for this, but it will not display all the content. It will display like first few lines, and then if you just keep on pressing the enter key, it will display you the other all the other contents. But cat will display the entire content of the file. Any questions anyone has till now? Okay, great. So
No, not till now.
So now if we talk about the command cp command used for copy. So of course, to copy you should have two parts. One is the source and other one is destination. So we will be using the copy source, and you will give the destination file name. It will copy the contents of file from one to another. Okay. So you will not like remember all these commands like on first day itself. It comes by practice. and by the use. So we have like I'll be sharing all these files and things to you, so you can refer to this. But it's not that only this file is like, its file has more than enough commands which you might not be using also. But still, like if you are if any one thing is missing, you can always refer to Google for that. To move any file, we can use MV and file1 and file2, which is basically to move one file from one particular part to another part. Okay. Symbolic link and all, like if you have to create a symbolic links and these things, symbolic link is something like where your file is stored at some other place, but you are creating a link to that file in your current directory. Okay, so in that case, you write ln -s and you give the entire file path name. So it basically creates that. Touch, I have told you that you can create the file, and cat is basically to display the contents of the file. Head and tail, if you specify like uh, head test, head -2 test, so it will display first two lines of the file. Like although I have only one line, so it is showing one, but it will display first two lines. If I say -20, so like anyways we have one line only, so it is printing one line here. Now if you want to check the date, so you can use date command to check the date. Okay, if you want to use, so cal is a command to basically display the calendar of the current month, so you can use that also. Okay, if you want to check that who is the person who has logged in, so you can write who am I, and it will tell you that who are you. Uname -a, I told you that it gives you the username and the other kernel related informations. Then there's a very good command known as man. If I do man and if I do, let's say, date, so okay, here it is not there, but man date is what it is. Basically it tells you. So today we are not using AWS console, but from Git, we are, when we will be starting with Git, we'll be using AWS console, so all the commands will be working there. Okay, now man command basically gives you one manual directory or kind of a help directory. So if you write man date, so it will display you the help directory from which all the commands which can be used in conjunction with date. Okay, or all the options which can be used in conjunction with date, all those commands will be displayed to you. Okay, similarly df is there to check the disk of the file system usage and all. If you want to check the disk usage, you can use du. Free will tell you that how much your CPU memory and the swap memory is being used. And to find more information about the CPU, you can use this command, that is like proc CPU info. Basically this will tell the CPU info. For memory info, this. If you want to see that what all the processes are running, so if you do ps, it will tell you the processes which are running currently in your operating system or in your server. Okay. So you can use ps to show the active processes. Top command is basically to tell you the out, like the top running processes and all those things. That like it is also one of the command to display the process only. So there are few commands like which basically like some command doesn't work in Sun OS, but some will work in Ubuntu or Linux. So again, that comes by practice, that you get to know that what command will be working in or not. But whatever I am telling right now, all those commands are common for any kind of the Unix or Linux variants. If you have to,
Satya, you
yeah,
are going to provide this.
yes, I will be providing this cheat sheet. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you talk about, and if you want to kill any process ID, or if you want to stop any process, any running process, so you can copy this process ID, PID, and you can use kill PID, this command. So it will kill that particular process. I would recommend to use always -9, because what it does, that whatever the this process will get killed gracefully. Like if something is going on in backend for with this process, so it will like complete that work and then it will do this thing. So to stop it gracefully, it will be there. So yes, audio recording will also be shared with you guys. Everything will be shared. Okay, now to see or to list out the background processes and all, you use the command as bg, okay, which is for background processes. Now, if you want to change any file permissions for user groups and others and these file permissions, so you use chmod, the one which I was showing you about the 421 and these things. So with that you will be using for with the help of chmod, and you give the permission and the file name for which you want to change the permission. To change the group and the ownership and these things, also you can use the chown and chgrp command, which basically helps you to change the ownership and group. The reason why we are telling this, because these days I see that most of the people, like if you go for a DevOps, like mostly with DevOps, there are DevOps engineer is the starting role which you get. So for these kind of roles, basically they expect that you should have a Linux knowledge, Linux knowledge, and they like, if I also take interview, I just ask them that, okay, can you tell me what are the commands you have executed? And like I just say that, okay, keep on telling me all the commands which you have executed until now. These are something which we will be seeing when we will be installing the packages and all. So that time I will tell you the main usage of these, because these again depends on the version. So like in Debian or the Ubuntu, Debian is basically for the Ubuntu and these kind of OS. So there are two kind of the package versions comes in Unix Linux. One is RPM and one is Debian. So in Ubuntu we have a Debian version and others we have the RPM. So based on that, when we'll install the package and all, I'll show you. Now to compress the file, you use compress, uncompress. For FTP, there is a this. To have a regular expression, we have a command as a grep. So we use grep command for the regular expression, or like to match any pattern or something. We do like grep minus, we write it like this, grep minus E, and then let's say that if I say that S star, so anything which is starting with S star, so in this like nothing is there, so it will display all those things. Okay. Now, so minus I is basically to ignore the case. Okay. No, minus C is to like list the count of lines, like or whatever the count of lines which are there for the specified pattern. Minus N basically tells you the line number for each pattern. History will tell you that whatever the commands you have run, like it stores that in the history. So if sometimes you think that, okay, you are like someone has run some command or you want to check, so you can check the history and all. But all these again, it all depends on what configurations you have on server. So if you have the admin role and these things, or root, basically if you have a root role here, then only you can see all these commands running. Logout is for end your session, VI I told. WC is for counting the lines and these things. Ping is used to check whether a particular host or a particular IP is whether you are able to reach to that IP or not. Mainly, basically, ping tells you that if you ping any particular IP, so it will try from to ping that IP, and if it will check whether it is getting a response from it or not. So you see, it sent the 4 packets and it got all the 4 packets. So basically, we call it as a hops in terms of Unix and terminology. So we got these 4 hops, and all these 4 hops are there. So our result is 100% and 0 is 0% loss. So there are sometimes issues you face that people say that I'm not able to connect to this, or I'm trying to connect to this, but still like I'm getting a timeout issue or something. And if that service is running from your server and something, so you can go ahead and you can ping and check the response of that particular service. So there are some of the advanced commands to the one is like, so init and all, like is it it's completely to the Unix file structure and all and these things. So Unix file structure we will not see here. When I'll go in the Unix operating system, I'll show you. Okay, now shutdown and restart are the 2 commands. Don't use anytime until unless someone is telling you. So never and ever try to use to shut down and restart commands in production environment. If you are very sure also, then also try to like refer that command 3-4 times if you have to do also. Ideally, most of the time it is the job of basically the admin person who has to do this. But in DevOps environment, you are everything. So that's the reason you have to execute these commands. But I would recommend like to be very, very careful issuing the shutdown, kill, start, stop command, these commands, because like your one small mistake can like you can lose your entire server also, you can crash the server also. So, and when you are working with the production servers, you have to be very, very careful. Now under the var folder in the Unix structures, basically when you go and when you do ls minus lrt to Unix, so normally in Windows what happens that you have C drive, D drive, F drive and like that. Okay, documents download like that. But Unix and Windows doesn't have those structures. Unix has like root, temp, var, okay, bin, all these things. So var will basically contains all your logs and other details. Okay, like it will contain your authentication logs, password failure logs, and a lot of other logs, also your application related logs and things are there. In bin, all your binaries, all your things will be there. Exe, all your executables will be stored. Okay, and opt is one directory where you basically most of the time you would be working in opt. Most of the your custom files or these things you would be storing under the opt. Also, don't store your files like which is very critical for you or which would be useful for you in future also. Don't store them under temp location, because if any housekeeping job or if any thing is housekeeping job means to delete anything and those files. So first of like what happened that if people run those jobs and all, so they delete the temp folder only, because that folder is basically to store temporary files. Okay, not any critical files and those things. So try not to put any temporary files under the temp folder. Okay, now so this apt and all we will be using, apt yum we will be using very much in our environment in basically our sessions and all. And there are some of the network commands and all. Okay, we use netstat basically. That would be at the probably at the end or somewhere. It would be netstat is one of the command which is like just which is to check that whether the particular port is listening or not. So if you do that netstat, you basically write it like that, netstat hyphen an, and like you grep for the port. Let's say that if you grep for the port 80, so it will tell that whatever to whatever IPs, whatever this port is listening or not. Okay, so sometimes you are launching some service or something which is running on a particular port, but it is not launching. So you see from here that whether that port is occupied, what is the problem, whether that port is being listed also or not. So you can check with using this command netstat minus an. Then awk is a very useful command. Well, like basically it is useful for text processing and data abstraction and these things. Like with the Unix, like awk and sed, you use like, let's say if you have a file with 10 columns and I want to print column 5 to column 7 only. So on those kind of scenarios, I'll go and I'll use awk and sed. Okay, so I have a file with 10 columns and I want to print column 5 or line number 80, like that. In those kind of scenarios, we use awk and sed commands. A very important command from an interview point of view. One of my favorite question for interview point of view. If someone says that I know Unix and Linux, my first question is probably related to awk and sed only, because most of people are unable to answer this command. So that is the problem with this command. So awk and sed is a very important command. We would be using for some purpose probably in future. lsoff command is also there. That is also for the ports. It is the again the Unix command will not work here. So lsoff is also one command through which you can check the port availability and these things. For virtual memory stats and for the your IO related stats and these things, you can use the VM stat and the IO stat command. Then to find any particular file or these things, you can use the find command. So you can find via the name, via the size. If any files which are larger than 128 MB or something, you can check when the C time is basically the change time. So when was the file last change, or when was the file like last change more than 10 days ago or something, you can use here. The gzip files, if you only want to find that file you want to find, will have the permission as this. So you can check all those things. Here this root slash is root directory, means you are checking in the entire uh, operating system and all the files. Okay. env is very important because in Windows it's very easy. You go to my computer, right click, set environment variable, go to system variable, apply the settings, and it is done. But here you don't have that UI capabilities and all. So what you do, like you basically go and you set a particular path. So let's say that if you have to set the path of a Python, so you say let's set Python path equal to, and like we give it the path name. So let's say that it is installed in C users this path. So it will basically set this, and then like you have to export that path into to your environment variables. So path and all settings again we will be using when we will be working on these things. etc users basically is a file which it is an inbuilt file in the Unix and Linux, where it will contain list of all the users and these things. So to lock unlock user account, until unless you don't have admin access, you can't do this. Like if you have to add any user, you use user add command, and if you want to lock any user account, you can use -l. Unlock a user account -u. So I think like Unix has, so basically there are by default when you install Unix or things, so it has a thing system like if any user tries to do incorrect password for 5 attempts, it automatically locks it user account. Okay, then as a root user only you can go and you can use this command and unlock a user account. But again, the main blocker is that you should have a root user account, otherwise you will not able to do that. So, and the last one is this cron tab. Basically cron tab is again one of the important command, not command. Basically cron tab is like, as you have in Windows, you have a task scheduler where you schedule your task. Let's say if you have a job which has to delete the files from your C directory every month, and if you want to do the same in Unix, so you schedule your task or you schedule your jobs via the cron tab in Unix and Linux systems. Then NTPD is one of the important command and useful command. There is a daemon NTP daemon process which comes in, which basically helps you to keep the clocks in sync in a different time zones. So it gets synced with the internet time servers and all. So there is a script and all like for which it works. But nowadays I see that most of the Unix and Linux servers, they have NTPD by default installed. Like I have worked on some systems like in 2015 and 16 where we manually used to deploy like in hundreds of server the NTPD domain and all. So basically it is very useful when we have a this like mostly like in US and in UK, what happened that when there are summer and winter comes, so we get 4 to 5 hours, like from 4 hours to 5 hours of a difference. I'm just forgetting that term. So when we have that time change happens, like from 4 to 5 hour time difference happens, then it is very useful to make sure that the clock of your servers are in sync. Because if this is not running, and if the clock of your servers will not be in sync, then all of the processes which would be running earlier might run either like like early or will run delay based on the time zone, and you might face issues. The rest is the network command, and we will be using it as and when required. So SSH and all. So that's not a here. So a lot of commands are there. I have put up all the commands and things here. I will be sharing this file with you guys, and so based on that we can work on this. Okay, any questions with respect to Linux, Unix? Mostly like I wanted to show the commands only to you guys. So any questions with this?
No, not from our side.
Okay, great. Okay, now let's move to the main topic, introduction to DevOps, or what is DevOps. So before that, like few of people like here, they already have some experience, or you would have heard a lot about DevOps and these things. So can anyone wants to like answer something that what is DevOps system? Okay, so do we need so Bhavita, I think your answer question, like do we need to install Linux machine? So yes, we will be installing Unix and Linux. We'll be working on Linux and Unix only. For that we will be using AWS, and as once we will be doing the demo, I'll share you that one document also before one day when we have to do that, so that you guys can set up your AWS account already. So there are like few people have, few people don't have. So whoever is not having, they can use that. Okay, now we all know that DevOps is a buzzword these days in industry, and everyone like they are talking about data science, they are talking about big data, but along with that they are talking DevOps too much. Like in data science also they are talking DevOps, in big data also. And it's like it's not like related, like people are so confused that what is this DevOps. I see that some people say that it is a technology, some people say it is a tool, some people say that it is a software, and like, so everyone has their own definition, because there is no one like who has an exact definition that what is this DevOps. So there are a lot of confusing things in the DevOps, but probably I think like from today onwards you will be clear that what is this DevOps. So DevOps, if we see with the name, it is basically derived from two words, dev and ops. So dev means development and ops means operations. It is a combination of these two words. Now, everyone has their own definition, but let's say what Wikipedia says about DevOps. Wikipedia says that DevOps is a practice, or DevOps is a software engineering culture and practice that aims at unifying software development and software operations. Means, if you focus here on the two highlighted words, culture and practice. So the first and foremost important thing to understand is that DevOps is a cultural movement. It is not any tool, it is not any technology, it is not any standard or anything which you were thinking until now. It is a culture, and there are certain practices being made, or there are certain best practices which are followed, which basically fulfills the purpose of this culture. Okay, so DevOps is a culture, it's a cultural movement, which, and what is that culture? It is culture, what is this cultural movement? This cultural movement is to bridge the gap between the development and operations team. How and why, we will see in few hours. But what is the this culture, why this culture came into picture? This culture came into picture to bridge the gaps between the development and operations team, and this culture has given to rise to the set of the best practices. Okay, so if we see the definition again, it says DevOps is a software engineering culture and practice that aims at unifying software development and software operations. Means, with the help of this culture, whatever the best practices and uh, the essentials which are required, like you have the different tools like Jenkins, Ansible, Kubernetes, Git, and all. With help of all these tools, you basically combine all these tools together to ensure a proper software development or software operations. And what does it aim to? It aims for shorter development cycles, increased development frequency, more dependable releases, in close alignment with business objectives. At the end, your business objective should be achieved, and how it should be achieved? By having shorter development cycles, by having the deployment frequency should be increased, releases should be more frequently. So using all this, the you can achieve your business objectives. So if anyone asks you what is DevOps, it is a culture, and or it is a cultural movement which basically gave rise to best of the some of the best practices, and those best practices helps us to achieve the continuous integration, continuous development, software development. How? By using set of tools. For each and everything there are set of tools. By using set of those tools, we can achieve this particular culture, and this culture can be applied in any of the domain. It's not that if you are working in a banking domain, if you are working in a healthcare domain, insurance domain, telecom domain, anywhere you can apply this, because it's not a technology which is dependent of something. You can apply it in any of the technology. So any questions here? Okay, now before going into scenario, let me talk about a little bit history of the DevOps, which is very interesting. So DevOps grew out of basically earlier. If you see that, you would have heard about waterfall model. Okay, you would have heard about the different SDLC models and these things. Okay, and in that only you might have heard recently, like there is agile model, like is a very popular. Everyone wants to work in agile. Everyone wants to like follow the agile software development model. and people are working in agile development model without knowing also what is this agile model. To be honest, people are working in agile model, and like only few of the senior folks, they know that okay, what is agile model, because they have to work in that. But whatever the ground force person they who are working, they even don't know that what is agile model, and they are using a sprint and all these terminologies every day. So DevOps grew out of this agile development movement only. Like agile was what? Agile was something where you are doing the things in a smaller parts. Earlier, what used to happen, if I talk about waterfall model, so waterfall model, requirement gathering will happen. After the system design, system implementation, testing, deployment, and maintenance. So it has the whole process where first of all you are gathering all the requirement, and you have created one software requirement specification document, which you call it as a SRS. Then you plan your system and design your system. Okay. After that, what you do, you implement the implementation of that particular system, whatever the SR requirements have been gathered, planning has been done, designing has been done, then you implement it. Now once you have implemented that system, you test it, you make sure that the quality and these things are assured, and then you go and you deploy it so that end users can use it. And once end users are using it, then accordingly the enhancement, monitoring, and all those maintenance activities, regular maintenance activities, will be going on. But can anyone tell me what were the challenges of this model, waterfall model?
Um, I think like we have to wait for the end result, and after a long time we will come to know like what is the actual output.
Exactly. So you really have to wait. There is a huge waiting time for the code deployment, because the process is so intensive, like, and so like it's a restricted thing that you can't move to any other process until you have done the first phase, or until you have done the second phase or third phase. So as a developer or as a something, the pressure of work is too much, because you have to complete the old, you have code, you have to complete the new code, and you have to wait for a huge time for the code deployment. The another problem is that it was very difficult to maintain the uptime also of the production environment. Why? Because every time some or other new development environment, like at the end it is coming, and you are not able to find out well whether your system is able, by the time the deployment is happening, there are so much challenges with your infrastructure and these things, so that it is very difficult to maintain your infrastructure and maintain the uptime of your environment. Now whatever the tools at that time we were using to automate or to do these things, they were not too effective. Okay. And if there is very difficult to maintain and do these things, so the number of servers and these things, you keep on increasing the number of servers just to ensure that the services should be up and running. And at the end, definitely when you have deployed and done everything, it's very difficult to diagnose also the tools, and check the feedback and all, or provide the feedback on the product. So there were a lot of challenges we were facing from the development point, from the operation team, and all those things. Now when we looked at these challenges and these things, so based on that, after that, new different software development life cycle came into picture. And after that, what happened that agile methodology came in. And now what agile methodology says that okay, you do all things in smaller chunks. Okay, they have divided the things into the sprint, which mostly happens bi-weekly. So every 15 days there is a sprint, and that sprint will basically take care of this agile method. Like there will be few tasks allocated, you are completing in that sprint, you are deploying that, then again doing that. But still it was not too effective with respect in terms of DevOps. So we'll talk about DevOps and agile together in a few minutes. But let's talk about the history of a DevOps. So what happened that in 2007, like this agile software development, when it came in 2007, it was gaining too much of popularity. And like this model, like everyone was praising this model, everyone was quite happy that okay, something new came in, we don't have to like wait much for the code, or we'll have a bit frequent releases, bit frequent deployments. Operation team was very happy because they don't have to worry about the uptime and all, because developers at the end, they do develop the code and just deploy it, but at the end of the day, operation team has to maintain it and make sure that all the operation challenges should be overcome. So they were very happy that okay, some of my operation challenges will be overcome now. but still it was not able to bridge that gap between the development and operations team. Still there was some issues where every time operation team goes back and like they blame DevOps, development team blame operation team. Some or kind of a blame game is going on in between them. Now, what happened that Patrick DeVos was one of the engineer. Okay, he was like working on, and he has like some good experience working as both developer as well as operation. And he was testing some project, and like he was like very frustrated that okay, what is this kind of issue? Why I am facing so much of gap and these things? And he decided that I will fix this gap. I will like I will overcome all these challenges and I will fix this. So he went to Canada, Toronto, and he met one of the guy named as Andrew Schaffer, and that was like Agile 2008 conference. And there he discussed with whatever those challenges and things were there with this guy. Now in June 23, like they again discussed with few of the other teams and all, like, and after that they met again with the in some conference known as 10 plus deploys per day. And from there they talked about this, and when they talked about the DevOps or how they can basically that time that DevOps word was not like it came but not too effectively. So what happened that they discussed about this, and then the discussion started on Twitter and all those things, and like people were like started discussing that what is this new thing coming into the IT industry. Now after that there was Patrick hosted the first DevOps days in Ghent, Belgium, a conference which was for both devs as well as for ops engineers. And since then since this DevOps days conference was hosted, since then this DevOps took another uh, another step into the world, and like it spread across all over the world. This movement spread across, and like people have started following the practices, and since then the number of tools keeps on increasing and like until now like the tools are coming only into the market, and like say there are every tool has some or other new features and these things. Okay, now before this, every one of you know that whenever you search for a job, so you know that you mostly get DevOps engineer, senior DevOps engineer, and these things. Now what or who is this DevOps engineer? What is the role of this DevOps engineer? Okay, we should understand that okay, I'm going to work as a DevOps engineer. What is the role of a DevOps engineer? If someone is working as an operation guy, we know that okay, I have to manage some servers. If someone is working as an architect, he know that I have to like he will be discussing the requirement, he will be designing, he will be discussing on the designing and the lot of other activities which he has to take care based on his day-to-day roles and responsibilities. Same case goes with the full stack developer or the developers. They know that they have to work on this code and these things. But DevOps engineer is a role like people know that okay, there is a role of DevOps engineer. What you do? Okay, I will build the server a pipeline in Jenkins, or I will create this, or I will create that. But it's not exactly that. First of all, DevOps engineer is a person who understands what is the software development lifecycle, who should know that what is the SDLC, as well as he or she should have this much of capability. He should have the capability to automate the things. Okay, to automate the things with the help of the automation tools. He worked with the developers, he worked with the operation teams and all those people, and he checks and he sees how the code release is happening, how this development is happening, how the operation team is working, and then he apply his passion and his efforts to automate that entire process of the developer and operations, combine them together so that this end-to-end process of continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous delivery will keep on going. Okay, so this is the role of the DevOps engineer. Whatever the other things which we hear or which we see in the jobs responsibility and these things, that is true to some extent, but that is not exactly the role of DevOps engineer. Okay, any questions here? Okay. Let's take one scenario. Let's assume there is some company name as ABC, and they are using cloud for some of their product, and like they have a lot of, they're using some modular components and all those things. Okay, they are like focusing their to do their work on the small pieces, releasing like the things very frequently, and they like want to get everything like all the features in front of customer quickly, so that they should get the feedback accordingly, and they should work on the things. But this, like, this process to some extent it worked, but what happened, like, slowly in that company, that it keeps, guys who are not speaking, can you please go on mute? It responds to changing the customer needs. Okay, like whatever the changing customer needs, the continuous changing customer needs which were coming, what happened that it has, like, they were started facing issues because the frequently the customer needs and things were coming in, the requirements are coming in, or the changing requirements basically which were coming in, it was very difficult to them, for them to manage all those things and to provide the frequent releases and the frequent code changes and these things. And that led for them to follow this DevOps and agile methodology like together. And so basically they can achieve this continuous deployment, continuous delivery, and they can release the release the deployments and the codes very, very frequently. So at the end, the ultimate goal, like what company wanted to achieve, was that the first one was to deliver reliable and high quality product updates, accelerate their delivery speed, and reduce the feedback time. Let's see the problems they were facing. First problem was they were not able, like it was very difficult for them to manage and track the code changes due to the very continuous changing requirements. When they are doing the code changes of these things, the builds are getting very, very like builds now. If you want to do something frequently, so of course your code build will be very, very frequent. And now your code build is very, very frequent, so it is very difficult for you to manage, test, and deploy that. Then third was environmental dependency. It was very difficult to make sure that how environmental dependencies are happening, like how you can manage the environmental dependencies, like if whatever the libraries and other dependent code which you have to club with them. Okay. And the last was they were doing manual testing, which is again like when you are doing manual testing, so it is very difficult for you to do the test so frequently. To overcome all this problem, they thought to follow the DevOps culture. And how DevOps helped them, let's see this. DevOps helped them by following ways. The first one is they use Git for managing and tracking their code changes. For the incremental builds to manage their that builds, to test that and do this, they use Jenkins. For environmental dependencies, they use Docker. And for manual testing, they move to automation and they use Selenium. And one point I missed there, configuration management is basically nothing. They use the Ansible and Puppet. Okay. Now what happens, as soon as developer, he has written the code. Okay, he has written the code. As soon as he has committed the code into Git, okay, now they have like automated the entire process. Okay, they have automated the entire process. So there are like, I'll just give you a little overview that how this entire process works. As soon as they have committed the code into Git, Jenkins keeps on pulling that onto the Git server, and it's checked that, oh, some code came. So it is very high, he's very happy, and like Jenkins pulled that code, it started like building that code, it started testing that code, and provide, if that code is failing somewhere, it just provide the feedback via the email that, okay, the code has been failed here to developer. Again, developer has tested, and again developer has like modified the code and then fixed all the issues, and again this cycle keeps on going. And after that, Jenkins can able to deploy that deploy also it to the production or the QA or the test environment, whatever environment you wanna do that. Now here, when this deployment part is coming in, at that time you have to take care of configuration management also. So for configuration management means that if you have to deploy that code, or if you have to deploy that function into two servers, or if you have, while deploying the code, if you have to make sure that Apache should also be installed on that server. Now apart from Apache, we should have the other dependencies and these things which should be installed along with my applications. So what will happen that instead of doing manually, you configure all those things in Ansible or Puppet or Chef, whatever you want to use, and you can, that configuration management tool will help you to deploy that application by installing all those dependencies. Now to overcome environment issues, what they thought that, oh, okay, I have to use a different versions and different things. So they use Docker. Okay. And they use the Docker and these things. Okay. And for
Sachin,
yeah.
so one question.
Yeah.
So there are also tools for Artifactory and JFrog meter or something. So where do they come in picture?
Yes, so Artifactory and JFrog repository, they are also, so that is your code repository. That is like, that comes like where you are storing your code. So instead of Git, you can store in that. But Git is helpful because,
Okay.
because with Git, you have a plugin and these things in Jenkins. So it keeps on pulling and it keeps on checking it from there. But you can integrate that with Jenkins also. So instead of Git, you can use your JFrog repository also.
Okay. Okay. No, because in couple of projects I've seen using that, so I was thinking where exactly to fit.
Yeah. Saurabh, so did I answer your question? How do we manage or store the build artifacts?
Actually, my question was also the same. So,
Yeah.
this build artifacts, I believe, Sachin, after Jenkins, we might be storing those build artifacts into Artifactory, the specific version. So, in case if I
Exactly.
wanted
Yeah.
to
Because there is
deploy
a,
the
yeah, there is
old build or I wanted to roll back, then I directly go via Jenkins and call the respective version of the build and then deploy it. So,
correct.
yeah.
So there is a like there's a, you can say, the tight integration or tight interaction between this. So in Jenkins we have the Artifactory plugin for JFrog or the other repository. There are a lot of plugins, so you can install that, and so when you created a build and all, so you can use like deploy it from there, manage it from there.
Just one question, Sachin. So, other than Artifactory, is there any other tool which is used to manage builds?
So yes, to manage builds, we like when we talk about Java and all, we have ANT, we have this Maven, Gradle, lot of tools out there. We'll discuss about that tools, the build tools.
Okay, fine.
Sachin, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Like this DevOps thing, uh, like we can use this thing in any technology.
Yes, you can use it with Java, you can use it with Python. It itself has so much of languages, YAML, Groovy, lot of things. You can use it with anything. There are a lot of openings in market where people are looking for a Java resource with
Hmm.
DevOps.
Because I have never used this thing before. Like I was working in RPG AS400, as I told you before.
Correct.
So nothing of this thing is used there.
No problem. That's the reason we are here, and we can.
Yeah, yeah. But I was like I was just wondering if we can use that in uh, RPG also. I don't think so. I don't know, because it was all manual. Like we used to do testing, we used to deploy our code separately. So
Yes,
I
so
don't.
for those manual only, that automation and these things comes into the market. And like when you are doing testing manual, so you buy like like now you can think that how why can't I do with Selenium? Okay, now when you are doing the deployment and these things manual, now you can think that why can't I do this with the Jenkins and all these things.
Yeah, but Babita, so when you're talking about AS400 technologies, so in AS400, I think Jenkins is not that strong, but there are various tools which do the same. And when it comes to COBOL programming on mainframe, there are various pipelines that could be fit in. So it's not exactly the same tool, but it
Mhm.
is different tool. But nowadays, I think apart from AS400, whatever new technologies are coming, I think Jenkins and Bamboo are pretty much the owners
Yeah.
of having the pipeline.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think for the new technologies, it is more relevant. Uh,
It's
yeah.
not yeah, that's true, but it's not like that, because I think banking is one of the domain which is using the most like legacy tools and legacy technologies. And like these days they are doing, like I saw there are a lot of articles, a lot of places like they are trying to implement in banking also. Like mostly they are trying to implement the CI/CD and all those things into these banking enterprise softwares and these things. So when
Mhm.
all these softwares and all, so they are uh, working with that also in the banking accounts also.
Okay. Because I used Eldon for the change management, like from there only I used to deploy the code. Uh,
Yeah, so I told you, right, that there are so many of tools, right, in market that it is like you sometimes get confused that okay, what to use and what not to use. But the ones which we are going to talk, like, that is the one which are the latest and more
mhm.
being used in the industry these days.
Okay. Yeah.
So, so for the DevOps in banking, someone asked me a question about DevOps in banking. So yes, DevOps in banking is the one which is being like now it is coming into picture. Mostly like when as we have a lot of mobile devices and these things coming in. So mostly they're you mostly they are following on the CI and CD things. But like I don't have any like real example that which bank has worked on this. But I've not worked on a banking domain, so I don't have any like example that which bank has worked on this or not. But yes, they do have this. DevOps is can be implemented in a banking account also. Okay. So okay, so this we were discussing about this solution and all these things. Now when I talk about these solutions, so this solutions, so we have the Git, Jenkins, Selenium, and all using all these tools. What is ABC company did that they have automated their entire process, and once they have automated their entire process, all their issues and all those things has been done. Okay.
Sachin.
Hmm.
Yeah, can you elaborate more on environment dependencies? Like, for example, in any certain project, my front end is .NET and my SQL is backend, and it is always fixed that I will be using this environment only. So, does the Docker comes in the picture in this case as well? Like
Yes.
environment?
Yes.
Yeah.
So environment dependencies, I mean to say here, the lot of times we face the version issues. Okay.
Okay.
When we have the applications and all, so a lot of times like see we are building up multiple applications and we face version issues. So your application can be deployed in one container which will have .NET and let's say the MySQL or whatever version you are using that thing. But for the like once now you have like came up with some more enhancement and some more features, you are using same thing only, but you are using along with SQL you are using, let's say you are using Toad database or you are using DB2 database. Okay, so you can install that in the same container, but if you are installing that in the same container in which already your application is running, it is causing some issues. So what you are doing that you are again creating another container and you are interacting with Toad from that container. So now your environment dependencies, like because all the containers are isolated from each other. So now that dependency has been overcome. A more precise environment a more precise example I can give you that you have an application running with different Java versions. Okay, or different Python versions, Python 2, Python 3, two versions we have in Python. It is running with two versions of Python. Now, the old application has to run with Python, but now you are customizing that application and migrating it to Python 3. You
Okay.
run the two version of same application like this Python at the same time with the same application. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
You will do, you will create two containers. One container will run with Python 2, other will run with Python 3, and both will be isolated from each other.
Okay, and while giving the putting it on the production, we will publish it separately as a container.
Yes, yes, yeah, that is a, yeah, that when you are doing
Okay.
the production and all at that time, you are talking about when user will see at that
Yes,
time how it will look to him, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That is a different, because that will that again, because now see if you are doing migration or if you are doing some features and all, so that is like you have to do some like configurations so that it should point out to the uh, same host and these things, right?
Okay, okay, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, before that, let me just tell you a little bit about that why DevOps before talking about agile methodology. So why DevOps is an interesting thing. Like we all know that market, I should not, this is like I should not tell that okay in market it is so much popular or something. You can Google it for the jobs and you see that how many jobs are there, and so this figure might not be like up to date for the salary one, because I have not seen the current like Indeed.com what is the US based salary average one. But as per this, like 127 2,231 is the dollars per annum is the by the Indeed.com was the analysis, a lot of big companies and these people, they are using DevOps. Like PayPal is one of them, Sprunk, Uber, GE, ING, and a lot of other startups and all. They are using the DevOps in their um, applications or in their whatever the projects they have. So they are using it. So it is important to know about DevOps. It's not necessary that you are doing some job only with respect to DevOps only, but it can be used in any way. Okay, in your company itself, if you are using a Jira, Git, Jenkins together, this is also one DevOps because you are doing some continuous integration. So it's because, as I said at initial stage, that this is the culture. You are following that culture and you are doing that. And how this culture is going to be helpful, because whatever the gaps were there between the development and operations team, the gaps were what that for development team. I talked about the gaps at development team when I was talking about waterfall model. The gaps were to manage the code, okay, to manage the frequent releases. It, like you get the end product very late and all those things. So, and development, like at the testing point of time, testers say something different. Operations team has, they're very difficult to manage the infrastructure or to manage the application related issues and these things. So all those gaps has been merged because now dev and operations team, they work hand in hand, and they talk, like they discuss about all the issues and all those things, and like discuss about means like they have like all the process automated and defined now. So the things has been minimized at a very, like, to a certain level. I'm not saying that it has been minimized completely, but definitely there are always improvement and things needed, but there are, the things has been minimized to a very good level. Okay. Before this, I'll talk about the agile methodology that is not in my PPT. Yep. But I'll talk about the agile methodology. So, like agile methodology, as I told, that it is basically what it is, a iterative model. Okay. Now, when I talk about the iterative model, so iterative based model means that you are doing the things in different iterations or in different sprints, and all these things are the term which are being used now, but you say that in a smaller part. So let's say that you have a 3 iterations for one thing. So iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3. Okay, or sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3. Most of people are using sprint these days, so I should talk in sprint only. So sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3. Now, although the sprint will have the same model only, like waterfall model, like you will have the same structure. You will do the requirement gathering, you will do the designing, you will do the development, you will do the testing, you will do the maintenance. But now the duration has been reduced. Now the duration is reduced, and it varies from company to company what kind of sprint structure they are following. Okay. So like I see that maximum, like most of the time, like people, they try to follow for one sprint, they go with 2 weeks only. Okay, maximum 15 days only they go, but that sprint generally lies between 2 to 8 weeks. And with the help of this, the best part is that now you can prioritize that whatever your high priority features are there, okay, or whatever your high priority tasks are there, you can put them in the iteration 1 or the sprint 1. Okay, then to the sprint 2, then sprint 3, or you can balance out the things basically. So what you do when you balance out the things and you do all this stuff, so what happens that uh, it reduces the workload also on the developers and these people. It reduces the workload also because you can manage the workload accordingly. That okay, if this sprint has a lot of complex features and these things, and you can move that other thing to the another sprint. So that's the another advantage of sprint. And after every release, because now release is happening sprint wise. Okay, sprint release is happening means after iteration 1 were completed, that feature will be released. Is sprint 2 completed, that feature will be released. So it's very easy for customer also to give the feedback very frequently, and like also to check the performance and these things of the application before the final or before the end of the product. So there are like, these are the few of the advantages of the agile methodology, where you can like, where the requirements and all, if it keeps on changing also, it really doesn't matter because you are working in a sprint model, and it is expected for that. And there's a direct communication and everything for all the people with the sprint who are involved in the project and everything. And it's very easy to manage also for the scrum master, whoever is managing the entire sprint. It is very easy to manage. Sorry. But there are for larger product, this is sprint model. Like I feel like that for larger products, when we have a larger project and all, like I have worked on one of the project like which went for like around 4 or 5 months. Like 4 or 5 months is not a very large, but still looking at the complexity, the project was very like intensive and all. For that, when we were following the sprint model and all, it was sometimes like I feel like that it is difficult to predict the time. It is difficult to predict that how much efforts we are going to apply. Okay, and there are some lack of documentations and all those things which were causing the issues. So I would say like that again, agile model was not too good for the complex projects and all those things. Okay, let's talk about any questions with agile methodology, guys.
No.
Okay, now let's talk about the DevOps culture. Basically, what is the goal of this DevOps culture? Now, if I talk about this DevOps culture goal of these things, so here dev and ops means developers and operations teams, both of them, they share the same goals. They have the same goals. What are their goals? Faster time to market, less production failures, more frequent deliveries, immediate recoveries, and more like productivity and all those things. So it is basically like the goal of both of them are quite similar. Okay, there is no like difference between the goal of both of these team, development and operation. So it's all about like that they are working in this culture to together, and equally dev will care for the stability as well as speed, whereas ops will care about the speed as well as stability. So both of these two things will happen parallelly. Okay, now let me talk about the DevOps life cycle. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so if I talk about the DevOps life cycle, so DevOps life cycle includes the following phases like plan, code, build, test, release, deploy, operate, and monitor. So these 3 to 5, 7, these 6, 7, 8 basically features or 8 processes are defined for the DevOps lifecycle, where you plan. So what you do that this is the first stage of a DevOps cycle, where you plan your project, your track, you visualize it, that how it will, like what are the efforts will be applied, what all the things will be there, how you are going to summarize it, and all those things. Second stage is where your developers are going to write a code and they are working on the code and these. Then you are going to build it. Build is what? Build is a pre-release version. So for everything, like if you have a 5 sprints, so let's say that every sprint has 1 build, so there will be 5 builds. So has 1 build, has 2 build, has 3 build, has 4 build, like that will keep on happening. Then you will have a testing process. You will be keep on testing all the process and all this software delivery pipeline. Then there is a releases, means how frequently you are going to release it. You are putting it into the repository, fixing the errors and all, and then you will be deploying and operating and monitor. So these are the quite simple phases, the same which we discussed for the waterfall and all those things. So the plan and the things looks like the same. Now the few of the concepts and tools I would be using together, these 2 slides I will be using together because they are the same, and we'll be talking about the DevOps concepts and the best practices, as well as the tools which are being used for the same. Now, if I talk about the build automation, so there are following concepts which we will be talking from now until the end of this course. And that would be build automations, continuous integration, continuous deployment, delivery, infrastructure as a code, in configuration management, or orchestration, monitoring, and microservices. Build automation is what? It is a process of preparing your code. It is a process of preparing your code for deployment in the environment. Okay. So it is a process where it is a pre-release version where you prepare your code, you get ready your code and build it so that before the deployment, okay, to the live environment. Now it does not really depend at what languages you have written, what language you have used in your development, okay, what code needs to be compiled and all those things. Everything you have to take care for this build. Build means that you are taking these steps to make sure that whatever the pre-released version is there, that should be the same, or that should be the consistent before going into the live environment. We use different tools for build automation, okay, which we will talk about. But before that, let's see that why we should do build automation. Because it, when you do build automation, so what happens? It's an automated process. When you do this process instead of manually, when you do this via any automation, like via the ANT tool or the Gradle or any Maven or any other thing, so what happened that this is fast process, okay. Then every time when you are building the your application and you are removing the problems and these things, so it is consistent, okay. And the same process you don't have to repeat again, like you don't have to repeat again and again manually. Means process is same again, but it is now automated, and it is a reliable also, okay. Now continuous integration, if I talk, so continuous integration means that whatever frequent code changes and these things are coming in, so all those frequent code changes are being, it is basically a practice of frequently merging the code changes by done by developers. Whatever the frequent code changes are done by developers, we keep on merging all those code. Earlier what used to happen, that all those code will be written or kept separately, and after like a long period of time when we are trying to merge it, so it takes a longer time as well as long effort, and also it was a risk to minimize the error and the dependencies, okay. So this process, continuous integration process, is basically a practice of merging the code changes which are done by developers, okay. And for this, like, we can use the Jenkins, Travis CI, Bamboo, all these server, we can use it, okay. With this, the advantages are that when you are doing the early code, merging the code changes frequently and doing these things, you can detect the bugs and all those things frequently, okay. Let's say if your code does not compile or automated test or these things get failed, so developer will be notified and they can fix it immediately, because they also know that, okay, this is what they have done right now and what will not, because it was a frequent release and all those things are happening, so it will be good for them. And also, like, with help of this, you can make the frequent releases and make the frequent testing also possible. Then there are two things: continuous delivery and continuous deployment. Continuous delivery, what does it mean? It basically means that it is a continuous delivery is a practice of continuously maintaining the code in a deployable state. Means whether the decision is made to deploy or not, but your code is in such a state where it can be deployed. Means if I say, please go ahead and deploy the code, so it should go, it is in a ready state and you are just going to deploy it, okay. That is known as continuous delivery. But continuous deployment is when you are means you are frequently deploying the small parts or small code changes, whichever happen, you are deploying it into the production directly. So small changes happen, you have tested it, you have done all the testing and all those things, and you are deploying it into the production. So people get confused with these two words, deployment and delivery. Okay, deployment means that frequent code changes needs to be deployed into the production, whereas delivery means that your code is in a ready state to be deployed, whether that decision is not yet made, but it is in ready state to be deployed. Any questions?
No.
Now infrastructure as a code, like, it is nothing, it is like how you are managing your servers, your instances, environments, how all these things are being managed through the code and the automations, those things. So for this we will be using Chef, Puppet, or Ansible, any of these code. In fact, we can use a Terraform also for this. Now configuration configuration management is that infrastructure is that what servers are there, what all these things are, you are not doing that. But with the help of configuration, if you see this infrastructure, like servers and all these things are ready with the infrastructure, and what configuration will do, it will install the applications or the dependencies on those things which are there. You install, let's say you want Java, you want Python, you want the SQL server, you want if you are using Java also, you want certain libraries to be imported, you are using Python, so you want certain modules to be imported, and all those things which you can do with the help of configuration management tool, which is again the Chef, Ansible, and these things only. Now orchestration. Orchestration is again the another important thing, basically because it is like the process which basically, or you say that it is kind of a automation which supports processes and workflows. Okay, means for provisioning your resources, it supports the processes and workflows. Example, let's say like there are like musicians. If I take an example of a musician, so what happens that with the musician, like he basically, if you guide him a little bit, okay, that okay, you have to do this, you have to do this, okay, or you have to if you have noticed that when musician play any like beat or any music or things, okay, like let's say he's playing it on a Casio, so they say that something like A2, A3, whatever, like they have to set it. So they say, when they, based on that little guidance only, he knows that now on which flow I need to go, okay, or which, or how to automate, or how to go, what flow I should follow. Similarly, orchestration works like that. That a little automation, a little guidance of provisioning resources, and then based on that, it completes like it automates, or it provisions your resources accordingly. We'll be using like Kubernetes is our one of the orchestration one, so we'll be using that. Now another one is the monitoring. So monitoring is like you have to monitor a lot of things. You have to monitor your disk IO, memory usage, your application logs, network traffic, and your other resources and these things. So you can use Nagios, and or you can use Splunk, you can use any of the tool to monitor these services. Microservices is something where we go ahead and we basically break the application into the smaller components, okay, or smaller parts, which are like known as a loosely coupled services. And you break these into the smaller parts and smaller functionalities, so that like at the so that you don't have to like work on like a larger piece of the application and these things. And also like they are independent of each other, like, and at the end when you relate with them or when you join them, so you can call them via their APIs. Like you have built on one path and you have written one API for, like, and then one API is created. If you want to use them in another, you can use that API and call those methods in that. Okay, so this is about the DevOps culture and the practices. Now let's talk about DevOps tools. So DevOps tools, like, okay, there's a very interesting thing I prepared by Zebia Labs. Zebia Lab is one of the company like which work widely in this DevOps area. So if you see this, I have this PDF file also. I'll share you this. Otherwise, I'll share this link also in the chat window. If you guys ever think that what are the tools or stuff which I have to work on DevOps, okay, always go ahead with this. You see that here we have like all this like cloud, okay, we have the like they have given on the basis of the continuous integration, database management, deployment, source control, testing, serverless. All these tools are written here, and you can just hover it over to find out at what is that tool and these stuff. So it will give you like Nexus, so it will tell you what is the Nexus life cycle, and like it will give you a little bit idea about that. So if you want to know about Red Hat Ansible, Red Hat OpenShift, Urban Code Deploy, Aqua Security, so these you can think that there are so many tools which are being used. So they have created this periodic table, which is very good and very helpful for understanding things. They have defined like what are the open source, okay, what are the free versions, what are the free premium versions, whatever the paid and whatever can be used as the enterprise also. So this is a periodic table for DevOps being created by Sabian Labs. Okay, before I move to tools, guys, any questions?
Yes, Sachin, before this slide, in this, I wanted to ask, like, what is the difference between infrastructure as code and configuration management?
Okay, so configuration management means that it's quite similar. Similar, I would say that when like they work in conjunction, because infrastructure means you are setting up an infrastructure like server setup and these things you have done. Okay, and
Okay.
again you use a configuration management tool and these things to deploy or to install the dependencies in that. Okay, like whatever the dependencies you have for the applications, you use that to deploy that. Okay, sorry, deploy and install that. Okay, to install the application libraries or the dependencies on the server, we like work together combinedly with infrastructure as a code and configuration management, where infrastructure will take care of your servers, your containers, and all those things. Configuration will take care of your libraries and the code and libraries and other dependencies.
Okay. And in this slide, like for everything, we have separate tools.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't want you guys to be panicked, but DevOps is something like this, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay, so for build automation, let's see about build automation tools. So now it depends like on what programming languages and frameworks you are using. Just give me one guys. Yeah, so it depends like on what programming languages and frameworks you are using. So based on that, there are different build tools being provided. Okay, like for Java we have ANT, Maven, Gradle. For JavaScript, like we have npm, grunk. Then there are some lot of like being used for Unix based also. Make is there for Unix based. One is there Packer for the machine, for the containers and all those things. So it depends what kind of language and things you are using. Based on that, you can use this any of the build automation tool. But mostly people use Maven or Ant only. So until unless if it is a JavaScript, then they go ahead with npm, because with JavaScript npm is already there. Now for the CI continuous integrations, you can use the uh, Jenkins, which is again open source only. Okay, you can use the Travis CI, which is again the open source. Okay, or you can use Bamboo, which is built up, which is not open source, and it is an enterprise product by Atlassian. Okay, and like the good part with Bamboo is that they already have out of box integration with the Jira and Confluence and all those things. Okay. Now for configuration management, like which helps you to manage your infrastructure and these things, or it's another way of implementing the infrastructure as a code. So you can use Ansible. Okay, Ansible, like it is a open source. Okay, and Ansible is very good. Like it's like though you don't have to use any agents or something, like it's just Python and all. Ansible. Then we have a Puppet. Okay, when we have Chef also. So all of them has some or other differences. It depends what you can use. Mostly we'll be talking about Ansible only, and like apart from that, we'll have a little overview on the other things. Then we have like Salt also. Like I have not seen using Salt much. Like few of the companies only use Salt. So the names are very interesting. And virtualization, you can use the hypervisors. Okay, like you have this Microsoft Hyper-V, you have Citrix server, you have VMware and all those things. Containerization, we all know Docker is there, so you can use anytime. Docker is anyway efficient. For monitoring based and all those things, you can use Nagios. So Nagios is there, which helps you. There are a lot of other also in market. There are Sensu is there, there is New Relic and all those things to monitor application logs and these things. You can go ahead with Splunk and all. Again, for application performance
Even,
monitoring,
even such in Elastic Stack.
huh?
Elastic Stack for log monitoring as well as
Yeah, if you are
uh,
using the cloud and Elastic Stack, you can use it definitely. Then for orchestration tools and all, you can use a Docker Swarm. Docker Swarm is there for orchestration, and for Kubernetes is also there. So we'll talk about both. There is a Zookeeper also, that is the open source Apache Foundation. We are not going to talk about Zookeeper in our session. Terraform is also there. For Terraform, we will talk a little overview, but I have a very interesting thing with Terraform to show how you can configure the AWS infrastructure using Terraform. So because Terraform works very, very well with AWS.
Sachin?
Yeah.
Sachin, for configuration management, you mentioned Ansible and Chef.
Yeah.
But I think Ansible would be more towards infrastructure as code, right?
So configuration and infrastructure works together, Saurabh.
Because what I heard is configuration management mostly will have all the Chef, Puppet, and all other tools. For
So if
infrastructure as code, we have Ansible, and then Ansible and Terraform goes quite hand in hand because they have slight difference in terms of how we manage the infrastructure with them.
so if I
That's what
ask
I
you the difference
read here.
between Ansible and Chef, any idea?
There is a very thin line, I would say, because the breakup eventually is at a very granular level, what I can
No.
see. But
Chef is
Ansible,
basically the
Chef, basically, what I can see, Chef, basically, if I tell you the difference, as per my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, but what I can understand, Chef primarily looks at the configuration management of your servers and all other components which are part of your infrastructure. Ansible basically talks about setting up that infrastructure and procuring your servers. So it's more towards procurement of the servers and getting that configured into an infrastructure using a configuration file which will be tied to my server, which is having all the infrastructure set up. That is towards Ansible side, but Chef is more or less looking from the configuration side of it, like what would be
yes.
the configuration of servers and how it should be and how the nodes are talking to each other. So that is what my understanding is. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So no, you are like whatever you have said, that is completely right, and like so that is fine. But basically, this configuration management tool, they only helps you to for the infrastructure as a code. Like as last time, I think like Babita asked like the difference between infrastructure and configuration, and I told that it works in conjunction, because if you see like both of the task of if you have to deploy 100 servers, or if you have to like say deploy 100 EC2 instances, then also you can use Ansible, Chef, Terraform, anything. Okay. Whereas like you will go ahead with Terraform because Terraform works best with AWS. Now again, it depends like what kind of
Yeah.
environment you have. Based on that, choosing the configuration management language.
No, I got it, because in the previous slide I can see there are more bullet points which are a detailed breakup, but over here you have kind of merged some of them. So now I got the
Yeah.
context because it's not one to one. Okay, fine.
So yeah, so these are the things we will be talking about. All of these tools, whichever is written here, we will be talking about lot and lot of things. Like this course is like a very detailed and very intensive course. So slowly and slowly you will get to know a lot of things. From the next week onwards, you will be getting to know about like Git, then Jenkins and all this thing. Then you will guys will have more understanding. We have a lot of lab activities and all those things. So like just be focused and like be patient, so to get the new flavors. Okay, now yeah, DevOps and the cloud. So lot of people think that if I have to use DevOps, I have to use cloud. I can't do it on premises. I don't say like that is the correct uh, understanding, but I would say it is very important to have the cloud knowledge with DevOps, because if you don't have the cloud knowledge with along with DevOps, so it's not that you are not good or you're not this, but looking at the current market, people want that person should have any of the cloud service provider knowledge. Mostly they prefer with AWS or with Azure, whatever it is, but they want to have the knowledge of any particular cloud service provider. Now we will be using the cloud for all our lab activity. Every one of you will be creating your account in AWS, and we will be using AWS cloud, and we will be seeing few things like EC2 and few other things we will see for the uh, cloud, and we'll talk about them a little bit there. Of course, not in depth because cloud is a complete different course, but we'll not talk about them in depth, but we'll be using cloud services. But with DevOps and with cloud, when they are deployed together, okay, then it gives you something very like a different, you can be some kind of a different product, because like everything is on the cloud being deployed and working together. So like the different hassles which you get, basically like managing the servers, or uh, you basically get the issues with respect to your infrastructure, the like you have to rent the servers, definitely there also, but serverless technologies and load balancers and these things which you get, those really provide you a different like goal completely to work on it. And we will see a little bit at how DevOps and the cloud work together, although we will be using all those things in the cloud. But when we will talk about the this thing, AWS and DevOps together, so at that point of a time we will have a different services which are already there by AWS, which are being provided by AWS. Now if anyone you does not know like what is cloud, so just for your understanding, I'll tell you in a layman term. Just understand that cloud is something like, means you are using someone else's computer. Anything which is deployed in the cloud or anything which is there in the cloud, it means that you are using someone else's computer. So there are remote servers which are deployed at any, or which are located at any other place, okay, but you don't know like where it is or what it is, but you're just logging into that and you are using it, doing your work, paying for that much time for whatever time you have worked, and log off. That's it. So cloud is something where you are using someone else's computer. DevOps, we know, a cultural collaboration between dev and ops. Okay, now I'll talk about a little bit about the DevOps and AWS, that what are the features you can use, and among which few of these features we will be using. So one is the EC2. So EC2 is a service like where you basically host, or from which you launch your servers. So it provides you the capability to launch your servers. So we'll be using this service in our entire session. Elastic Beanstalk, it helps you like for the provisioning and provisioning of the resources and these things. So, and the load balancing and these stuff. So we'll be having these also here, but we might not use Elastic Beanstalk at that level. Let's see that how we are going to use it. Then we have AWS Code Build. So AWS Code Build is one of the service which basically helps you to achieve continuous integration in AWS. Then we have AWS Code Deploy. It helps you to achieve continuous deployment in AWS. Then you have AWS Code Pipeline, which helps you to like create a pipeline like from a build to deploy. Then you have a Code Star. So Code Star is one like which basically like gives you a project management tool like and Jira and all those things. Like it allows you to integrate with Jira and the other project management tools. Then you have a Cloud Formation, which is like from which you can again it acts as an infrastructure as a code. You can set up your infrastructure. It is also JSON or YAML based, anything you can write. Then ops work is again your infrastructure as a code. With you use Chef with that, Chef or Puppet, anything. Lambda is a serverless functions, or it acts as a function as a service. And Amazon CloudWatch is there, which basically you use to monitor your logs, to track your metrics like CPU metrics, this metrics and all these things, to set the alarms and do a lot of other things. So this is about the DevOps. This is about the services which are there in AWS, which are being used as the which are being used as the services to achieve the DevOps culture. Okay. So now This is all about the agenda for the today, where basic requirement, where basically like we talked about the before that. Guys, any question? Like, if anyone has anything to ask or any questions. Okay.
Sachin, yeah, Sachin, in the last slide, like right now we have these all the bullet points that you have marked. These are all services, right from EC2 to Amazon CloudWatch. These are all services.
These are all services of AWS.
Oh, fine. Okay, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now.
So these are, sorry for.
No problem. Go ahead.
But these things are common for DevOps and Amazon Web Services.
So the process and the domain knowledge, when we talk about that, is quite common and quite same. Like these, basically the code deploy, the code build, the CI and these things which is there, that is same. Same means like the continuous integration logic would be same there also, and which we are doing with Jenkins, that also. But when you do it on the cloud, at that time, of course, like different terminologies and different things come into the picture. So I have just given you the context that how basically this looks like on the AWS. On Azure, the services name will change. On Google Cloud Platform, the services will be changed. On Azure, we call it as a Azure Azure Compute Engine. Okay, we don't call it as EC2. Okay, on Google, we call it as a Google Compute Engine. We don't call it as a EC2. So they have their own like way for DevOps and these things which they follow and they use it.
Okay.
We will not talk about these services in our training, that is for sure.
Okay, but DevOps and AWS are the same thing, or these both things go together?
So Amazon Web Service is one of the cloud service provider, okay, which basically allows you to run your applications on a cloud. So Amazon has their own cloud service, which is known as Amazon Web Services, okay, and
Okay.
they configure and host their instances, whereas Google has its own like Google Cloud, okay. Microsoft has Microsoft Azure. So we are using AWS and but to host launch the servers and these things by using the EC2 service, the first service. And we will be using this also, Cloud Formation also. When we will be using Terraform at that time, we'll be using Cloud Formation also. I'll try to cover whatever I can, okay, with respect to AWS, so that you don't have to look for the things after this course anywhere.
Yeah.
I'll try to cover up those things. I got your context into it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So for today we will doing the for today's session we're doing the stop here, and because we wanted to talk about the introduction and the theoretical things, so I don't want to go with the 3 hours of a session, because 3 hours of theory is like at the end it is just like a khichdi, so it's not of much use. So so we discussed about the DevOps, about the Unix Linux command. We talked about the what is DevOps, the history of DevOps, how it came into the picture, why you need DevOps. We talked about waterfall model. We talked about agile model. We talked about the DevOps culture, DevOps tools. What are the best practices? What are the practices and like what are the goals of the DevOps engineer and these things, and how DevOps and cloud work together. How like what are the services AWS has here, and what are the services like there are other cloud providers can have a different services. So we talked about this much things in all here and discussed about it. So if any questions, let me know.